My name is Don Hohman. I have a PhD in education, and the specialty is in evaluation systems. But my background is wider and more varied than that. I'm a technologist. I hold contracting licenses in HVAC. I am a residential home builder, and I have repair licenses for automotive as well. My background basically is in education and technology. I've been a instructor in the post-secondary system, community college system. I've taught and managed heating, air conditioning, refrigeration programs, and have been the chair for 7 occupational programs. I've also been in education and training for industry, and I have a patent in air conditioning, refrigeration as well. More than this explanation, and people's eyes begin to roll in their heads. They can't believe that I've been doing all of this kind of thing. So, with that, I'll end my explanation of myself.
Okay, how did you find out about OSE?
I found out about OSE by listening to NPR. There was an article about OSE on NPR, and I poked around a little bit on the internet to find out more about what I heard, and there I saw some of the job openings.
Okay, will you tell us more about your personal interest in working with OSE?
Well, OSE is, in my mind, kind of a unique way of presenting information to the average, ordinary people. My basic interest is in open source, and to that end, I use open source software. I'm using the Ubuntu operating system, Debian operating system with the Ubuntu interface, and I've been doing that for quite some time. And it's interesting to me how the open source market works. It isn't as closed as some people might think, and it is very robust. So when I heard about OSE, my technical background popped out, as well as my interest in open source technology, and it got me thinking about the fact that as a technologist and as an instructor, I continuously share information about how things are done and how things are put together, and help people without any costs associated with that. And I belong to another organization where I freely provide that technical expertise and get people going and thinking about how to do things on their own. And we've had some results of people actually producing machinery to husk walnuts, if
Wow.
you can imagine,
Yeah.
and to process walnuts for home consumption as well as industry.
That's amazing. Okay. What is your understanding of our problem statement?
My understanding, you have to repeat that, there was a little bit of a glitch.
What is your understanding of the problem statement that we are trying to address? Yeah.
The problem statement for OSE.
Yep.
My take on that is really multifaceted. There's a whole lot of things that I have questions about, but one of the biggest problems I see is getting the information out there to people who generally are not connected to the web. The OSE mantra, as I see it, is making all of this information open source and available to communities, not only in the first world, but in the third world. And with that idea in mind, I think the communication of open source technology, the blueprints, the tools, all of those things are going to be the huge hurdle to overcome in lots of different ways, lots of interesting ways.
Okay, and what problems, if I could ask it another way, what problems are we trying to solve?
Well, as I understand it, the problem, the overarching problem to be solved is to get this information into the hands of people that can use it on a daily basis.
Okay. Let me try and think of another. Who are we trying to help, and how can we help them?
Okay. My understanding again is that this idea of open source ecology is for the masses. That means that it could be almost anybody from the individual person, homeowner, to a small corporation that wants to get into the business of producing various pieces of equipment, or supporting the production of, or the dissemination of, or the availability of small parts and pieces that can be used to build the entire machine.
Okay. Okay. I think that's a really good practical answer. What do you think our potential impact is? How do you view the opportunity that OSE provides the world?
That is one of my questions, actually. So I don't know if I can answer that very well.
Okay.
Based on what I just said, and the fact that I don't understand completely all of the ramifications to what's trying to be done from a technology point of view, I don't know if I can answer that question completely. From a software point of view, since I've dealt with open source software, I can see how source coding can be shared very easily, modified, and then put back up very easily for people. From a technologist point of view, where I've actually worked on, built, and designed various types of technical equipment, I'm a little confused as to how the process is going to be forwarded or developed to be able to allow people to share parts and pieces. I mean, tangible parts, hardware, and pieces of equipment. I can see how the specifications can be shared electronically, and that can be printed and given to people. But the sourcing, rather not the sourcing, but the actual production of parts and parts and pieces that may be unique, although I understand that most of this should be off-the-shelf kinds of components. I can see some aspects of this dissemination where there may be a need for a unique, one-of-a-kind linking piece of technology. So it's going to be interesting to me to learn a little bit more about that, and so I have an open mind.
Okay. When you were originally approached, it was probably by Tom Bamford, is that right? Did you talk to Tom?
The person that I talked to offhand, I can't remember that person's name. It was quite a while ago, and it was just an in-passing kind of a conversation.
Okay.
A very light conversation. So.
Were you applying for a specific position?
Yes, I had applied for the executive director position.
Okay. Um, okay, I think it's good to clear up right off the bat that we're probably have switched gears away from recruiting an ED at this point. Um, I think we have to establish some kind of bootstrap funding model that's going to sustain the organization. We do have a certain amount of money right now, but we recently hired a director of manufacturing, and his job is basically to start with a single machine design and develop a manufacturing system so that we can rapidly produce that first machine and then sell it to to generate revenue for the organization. Um, I think in order to be in a position to hire an ED, we would have to have more revenue coming in. Otherwise, we could quickly get ourselves in a situation that's unsustainable. Although I think, your resume is pretty outstanding. I think with anybody who's involved with OSC currently, I am the most nonprofit minded, and so I see you as a potential huge ally in setting up OSC to be a sustainable organization in the long term. Um, for example, a lot of people don't necessarily understand the utility in having program evaluations right now, but I think that's one of the strongest things we can be doing. Would you agree?
Repeat, again, there was a little bit of a glitch when you said that last sentence.
Oh, I was saying that I think that program evaluations, for example, a lot of people in the organization might not understand the utility of that right now, but personally I feel like that's one of the strongest things that we could be working on.
Gotcha. Yes, exactly. Program evaluation and how that program is moving in the direction that you want it to move is going to give you all the clues you need to be able to tweak that program to continue making it continue to make it move in that direction. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that all ties in with maybe you and I can just kind of talk if you have a few minutes.
Sure.
I'm not. We'll have to kind of see if we can build a relationship, and I think you're an outstanding candidate for the ED position. Although I'm not sure that that's the plan right now. I mean, I haven't heard that be the plan for a couple months. But if you're interested in just talking, I think, if we build rapport, that we could come to that place where we want an ED. But I have to be pretty transparent up front that I don't think that that's the priority right now. So if you would rather not invest any more time, I understand. Although I would love to talk with you about where we're at.
I'm up for a conversation, so go right ahead.
Okay, yeah.
I actually have some questions for you too.
Okay, great. Well, let's see. I'd like to tell you more about where we're at. So we're writing a strategic plan right now, and we're pretty clear on what our programs are, and we have a logic model that's pretty well defined.
Okay.
And we have plans to generate revenue in-house without relying on grants. And then we also have a diversified revenue stream with the nonprofit sector. We're filing for tax-exempt status. Right now we've finalized our application and a lawyer has reviewed it. So we'll move out of a fiscal sponsorship relationship into just being a fully independent 501c3 within 6 to 9 months. But in the meantime, we have a lot of grant money from a number of different grants, and we're establishing various systems. So we really need to be transparent with how that grant money is being spent. I think that's one of our major things that we have to implement. We're building our board of directors right now, and then we're hiring somebody to help us develop our curriculum. So you might be interested in doing. We're hiring a director of learning, so that might be something that you may be interested in looking at. We're also hiring a documentation team, so we'll have a CAD director who helps us generate CAD models for each machine we design. We're also hiring a videographer to live on site and produce instructional videos and documentary footage and documentary updates on a weekly, monthly, and 6-month basis. And then we have various programs that we're developing. So we have an agricultural program, and we've got a director on site who's working on that. We've got a construction program, and there's a director on site working on the development of that program. And then we have the manufacturing one in place with the R&D happening on the side. So there's a lot of diverse things happening, but I think getting the strategic plan in place, getting the legal structure, getting the board of directors recruited, and then starting the program evaluations, that's going to be a lot of really important work that we'll need to put in place in order to be sustainable in the long term. So what's your impression of the things that I just outlined as our priorities? Do you think we're hitting a lot of the right targets? Are there any
I
that...
think...
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was just
gonna
ask if you think there are any that I didn't hit.
Well, one of the I don't know if there's anything in particular that you didn't hit. Let's answer that question first. But generally speaking, I think you are hitting the right notes to create a cacophony of sound that may sound like a chord.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the questions I had and continue to have, and I voiced this to the person I talked to before, was that you're going after a 501c3 status. And that's all well and good if you plan not to try to make money. A 501c3 is a charity. And I've actually written and set up an organization for 501c3 status myself without having to go through a lawyer and that sort of thing. You really don't have to use a lawyer. You just have to hit the right topics, and you've got to treat the topics correctly. And your comment about creating a machine to generate profits struck me at odds with what a 501c3 is all about. How do you relate this need for profits to the 501c3 structure?
Our plan with that is right now to keep the machine sales and production within the bounds of the training program. So basically our on-site trainees are building the machines within the context of their training program, but in the that's going to only last so long until we're going to get to the point where we would get into trouble with the IRS. The plan in the short term is to just continue to funnel all of our revenue from sales back into our charitable purposes, but in the midterm to the long term, we're going to have to establish a for-profit, non-profit hybrid where that moves into all of the machine sales will be solely within the domain of the for-profit entity, and the profits from that organization will be funneled into the non-profit, and we'll have a co-branding relationship. But our lawyer has looked at it, and he said that as long as the machines that are being sold are made by trainees within the bounds of the training program, then that will help us avoid the conflict that might arise with the IRS. And there are other nonprofits out there that create products and sell them in order to generate revenue, as long as there's no profit going to private individuals, as long as the revenue all goes back into the organization. So that's our understanding, and you might have a different opinion on that, and I'd love to hear more about it. But
okay, well, the explanation would be a lot longer than what we'd want to spend on the phone, but generally the key to that is that if you're selling something, you have to have a tax ID. And when you have a tax ID and tax applied, that's when the IRS starts knocking on your door. The second part of that equation is that once you have more sales than you do, well, let's just say donations, for lack of a better term. There's a whole plethora of terms there. But once you have more sales than you have donations, then the IRS comes knocking on your door again. So there's a lot more to it, and while your lawyer may say that's one way to skirt the issue, it is, in fact, skirting the issue. It's not addressing the issue. So my suggestion would be to immediately take a look at setting up a for-profit, which is much simpler than a 501c3. And just set up that for-profit entity and funnel all of the sales through that entity. And just do it immediately. It's very, very simple. And that way you stay out of the binoculars of the IRS, you might say, and you can then maintain the IRS status. You've got on one side a not-for-profit entity, and on the other side a for-profit. Your interns can work in between the two, being supported by the not-for-profit, but then sales for the for-profit are generated and are taxed and, follow the IRS regulations on that side. That's the easiest way to do it.
Okay, your point's definitely taken. I appreciate that input.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And there are lots of companies that have for-profit sides and not-for-profit sides.
Yeah, and someone told me along the line it's better to start the nonprofit first before you start the for-profit.
Well, that can be a coin toss. It just depends on where you are. And in your case, you are having money being donated, so I would say yes, it would probably have been better to start the not-for-profit first, because you have to deal with that money within a couple of years worth of time, and the IRS wants to see that, that report sent to them on a yearly basis, but they give you a year to try to catch up.
Yeah.
So yes,
okay.
I agree. For-profit in your case would have been the best way to start. I'm sorry, not-for-profit.
I think that's the way we're going anyway, so it looks like we're on track.
Yep.
Okay.
But the for-profit entity is really, I think, important if you're planning on developing some sustainable monies. And that was one of my questions to the first person I talked to, and he was kind of, he didn't understand what I was actually saying, I don't think.
Yeah, we've come a long way with our planning since that point. And Tom is a remote collaborator, so the guy you talked to before, he hasn't been on site and worked with us on a daily basis, so he's a little out of the loop. But I think, I really respect your experience. I would love to have you involved in the project. I could definitely use an ally like you to teach us, to teach the community what we need to do, because in my opinion, our programs have the potential of helping millions of people. We have a responsibility to that potential. And so we have to lay a strong foundation for a nonprofit, for-profit entity, just an organization in general that can be sustainable and that has integrity and that really is well functioning. And I think you could be a huge ally in developing that.
Well, I appreciate that. And to that end, that's why I was thinking about throwing in my credentials and my talents to help guide the organization, because I really think that you do need somebody to have a view from the top. There's so many people, yourself included, that are so tied up with the day-to-day things that it's easy to miss something along the way. And when you miss something, that looks like a stumble, and when people view it from the outside, they go, oh, well, maybe this isn't an organization I should get involved with yet. It doesn't look like they've got, everything lined up.
Right.
So that's where I think you really do need to have somebody take a look at it from the top, and not to have a heavy hand and not to have a day-to-day involvement, but to be able to be, let's put it this way, to be able to tap in on what's going on and to have people just ask questions, hey, what do you think of that? And just be able to have somebody that can act as a sounding board and say, here is what I understand, maybe we ought to ask some more questions about that, maybe we should get some more clarification before we move on this, but have some kind of, guiding presence. Now, I'm really interested in knowing a couple of things myself, but I want to keep you talking and answer as many questions as I can for you. So,
well, I'm comfortable. If you want to ask questions, go ahead. Feel free.
Okay. What do you see as the most pressing leadership issue in the organization?
The planning. We really need to have a solid plan, but the plan needs to be written as a group effort and we need to have, everybody who's part of our core team needs to have input, and then we need to have our plan reviewed by the board and by some advisors. It needs to be a plan that's realistic and tied to specific action items that are feasible for people to accomplish, and we need to make sure that everybody feels like they're tied into a plan that's going to get us to where we want to go, and that their actions are not being wasted, and that their time is not being wasted. So I think developing a plan is probably the single most pressing issue right now. What do you think of that?
It sounds like you have some things that people have decided to do, and you were ticking off that list and asked me, what do you think about those points? That had to have been generated from some kind of plan. So how do you see the planning process at this point? Is there something there?
The way that the plan has been worked out through conversation and some documentation. The way it's worked is, we know we want to do sustainable product design and machine fabrication. So we want to do the manufacturing component. We want to do sustainable construction, and we want to do sustainable agriculture. So we have these three main branches, and then there's an education component. But what we've done is we've hired 3 directors to manage those aspects, and they're writing work plans and kind of inventing the road as they walk it, with the ultimate goal of creating a replicable model for the development of enterprises within each domain that can be replicated for, by other people anywhere on the planet. The thing is, there's only so much energy that we can put into any of those tasks, and aside from those 3 tasks, we have to build the organizational structure, which is primarily, I'm doing that with our founder Martin. But because of our organization is pretty vast, there's a lot of things that we're attempting to do. So really maximizing everybody's effort and identifying things like reward structures so that everybody is sustainably involved. There's a lot of things that need to be clarified and thought through, and we're going to need more people on the team who can help us do that than just Martin and myself.
Well, here's a question for you. Do you see those 3 directors as mutually exclusive of one another?
Well, they live on site together at our facility in Missouri, and we're all checking in together on a daily basis and we do work together, but there could be maybe some more intentional like coordination of those plans. Yeah, I think that would be one avenue of really refining the way things operate.
Well, I really applaud you guys for what you've done so far, and there's
Thank you.
been, 24-hour, 7 days a week efforts here. I can see that, and for, and I want to make sure that I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Is it Marcin or
That's what I thought too. It's actually marching, like marching to the rhythm.
Martian? Okay,
Marching.
very good. Everybody has their own way they like to hear that sound.
Yeah.
Okay, so for Martian to come up with an idea a few years ago about building a tractor, and then coming this far, this quickly, is actually revolutionary, and
Wow.
that's good. I really like that. That means that there's a lot of free thinking going on. That means the organization is open enough for people to make decisions at the spur of the moment, and that's all good. But I think in the same sense of all of those good things, there are some I'm going to say bad things that could follow. And you could take an example of 3M company, who did the same kinds of things in the late 60s, early 70s, and had separate companies going within the company. They really did revolutionize a lot of things. One of those things that came out of that, and you may know this story, but Post-it notes came out of that. It's an interesting little story about people who felt entrepreneurial enough to be able to make some decisions. And it created a nice little industry that 3M spun off, after a while. So you can do that, but you can also get yourself into sticky business by having independent people making independent decisions for the good of a large organization. And that's where I see that there needs to be, and I'm hearing you actually saying the same thing, that there needs to be some more connectiveness, specifically with the planning aspect.
Okay, John, if you're interested, I would love to answer all your questions and then ask you to sketch an outline. You could spend as little time as you have available, but sketch an outline of what you think our priorities should be at this point, and maybe identify what you think needs to be in place in a well-functioning nonprofit. Do you think that you would be interested in like proposing some things that we could work on?
Yeah, what I could do, Aaron, is I could do something that would be short, to the point, and would give people things to think about. And then I would say to you, look at that, and then if you have questions about any one of those things, or if you thought some of those things were more important than others, we could concentrate on expanding on any aspect of that. Does that sound interesting to you?
Yeah, and I think this is the start of building a relationship, and we'll see where it goes with time. If everybody everybody who's involved has gotten involved in a sense of being a lifestyle investor, we we there's a lot of there's a precedent set. Let's put it like this, where people invest themselves up front, and then they earn authority and status within the organization. That's how it works. I feel like you have a lot to offer, and I'd love to see you invest yourself out of a genuine care for what we could accomplish together. And the precedent is there for the community to value people who invest themselves in that way, and then the exchange happens over time in that way. We have there's I'm not clear on what we could do to reciprocate you right now for your services. Although we can have that conversation, I think the next step in that direction would be for you to talk with Marchin and meet our board and all that. But I think the trend is there for people to, invest their skill and care and heart into the organization, and then that reciprocity happens over time organically. Are you comfortable with the process like that?
It's a process that is not unfamiliar to me.
Okay.
There's been lots of positions. I've had a lot of positions where there was no person before me, and so I had to develop the position and find out what the responsibilities are. And I'll tell you, with respect to that, a quick little story. I belong to the Nut Growers Association, and somebody nominated me for second vice president. And I said, okay, before I accept, can somebody tell me what that position entails? And there was an advisor from one of the universities that was there, and he suggested that since we had a room full of past presidents, that those presidents come to the front of the room so that we could recognize the presidents in the first place, and then in the second answer that question and maybe any other questions that might come up. And so he got them all up to the front. There was about 7 of them, and they all had their arms folded, and he said, so can you answer John's question? And they all looked from side to side at one another and shrugged their shoulders and said, I don't know. And I said, well, okay, based on that, I'll take the job.
So what the moral of that story, that's what I take from that, is you just do what you have to do.
That's right.
Okay.
I fill in the organization, and I help the organization with whatever expertise or talent I can provide, knowing full well that a lot of these people have a lot more knowledge in not producing, horticulture, agriculture, and so on, and could pronounce all of the scientific names. I can provide certain talents that they need, and so I offer those talents.
Right.
So that's essentially what you're suggesting at this point, and I'm okay with that, and we can go from there.
Okay, John, well, I really appreciate your time. I did have one final question for you.
Oh, sure.
What's your experience in the for-profit realm?
Well, I have run a for-profit company. I have a company of my own called Adjunct, and I run that currently. That company has also done service work and design and sales and engineering work. So, something along those lines is essentially what you're needing for a for-profit entity. And so, yes, I've done that. I grew up in a Pontiac and Buick dealership. We had Western Auto and Maytag appliances, and so I'm not unfamiliar with for-profit at all.
Okay, great. Okay, so I appreciate your time. It sounds like our next step is you would outline the things that we talked about, and
Sure.
we'll take a look at that, and then follow up with you after we look it over.
Okay. And would you like me to send that to you?
Yes, please.
Okay. At some point in time, too, I would like to talk to Marchin.
Sure.
And
this is actually a good time. This coming next 2-week window is a good time to talk with him.
Oh, okay. Very good. And we can do that. I saw your emails come in delayed, of course, about Skype. We can do a Skype session if you'd like.
Okay,
And
it'll work either way now because I just bought their unlimited account, so I can call mobile phones from my Skype account now. So either way would be good. Face to face is nice because it's more personable. So.
Oh, sure. That would would be great too. And I don't know if you've got money for travel, but that would be a possibility.
Sure. And where are you? You're out on the East Coast.
I'm actually out of Michigan, and if
Okay.
you took your left hand and laid it palm down on the table,
Yep.
essentially that's what the Lower Peninsula of Michigan looks like. And I would be right in the center of your knuckle region, right in the middle of the mitten, we call it, here in Michigan.
Okay. Yeah, that's beautiful country over there.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah, and you're not too far away, I guess.
No, and I have a daughter that lives in Sioux City, Iowa, and we go out and visit her once in a while. So that gets me closer yet.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, John. I will. I'll look for your email, and I will share this interview with Martin, and then we'll plan on meeting with him.
Okay, very good. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, John.
Mm-hmm.